High above the old mill town of Waterbury, Connecticut, there is a hill that glows at night. A hill crowned by a towering, illuminated cross. A beacon so bright it can be seen from miles away, cutting through fog, snowfall, and even the darkest storm clouds. Most people driving on I-84 see it and think nothing more than, oh, it's pretty. But they don't know the truth. They don't know that beneath that soft glow lies the remains of a forgotten theme park, a crumbling, biblical world built of plaster mountains, hand-painted signs, and tiny cities modeled after Bethlehem and Jerusalem. They don't know that this strange religious attraction once grew eager families by the thousands, and then, just as quickly, fell into ruin. Tonight, we're climbing that hill. We're peeling back the layers of brick, ivy, plaster, and myth to uncover the strange story of Holy Land, USA, from its bizarre creation to its decay to the tragedy that still echoes in the tunnels and broken pathways. A story of faith, fanaticism, abandonment, and the spirit some believe never left. This is Holy Land, USA, a theme park built for God, a haunting preserved by time, and a cross where the past refuses to stay buried. Welcome to Death-Kissed Traveler. My name is Marissa, your morbidly curious host. Thank you for listening. Make sure you hit that follow button and find me on TikTok or Instagram at Death-Kissed Traveler Podcast. I will post pictures of this episode and others. Trust me, you're going to want to see the pictures from this episode. Now let's dive into the Holy Land. On the western edge of Waterbury, Connecticut, past the worn brick factories and old mill roads, a solitary hill rises above the city. Locals call it Pine Hill. During the day, it looks ordinary enough, a tangle of brush, rock, and rustling trees. But at night, right after dusk, that hill becomes something else entirely. Because perched at its summit, glowing like a beacon for miles, is a cross, a towering symbol that once belonged to a place nearly forgotten. Holy Land, USA. Today, the cross is a landmark everyone knows. But the story, the real story, begins decades earlier with a man whose dream was equal parts devotion, ambition, and mystery. His name was John Baptist Greco, a Waterbury attorney and deeply devout Catholic. In 1950, while America was obsessed with roadside attractions, miniature villages, and spiritual revival, Greco envisioned something different, a place where visitors could walk through the entire Bible, from the creation to the crucifixion, all built by hand on a rocky Connecticut hillside. Not just a religious exhibit, but a pilgrimage. Not just a theme park, but a sacred stage. Greco began construction around 1955, working with volunteers from a Catholic fraternal organization he founded, the Companions of Christ. These weren't professional builders. They were tradesmen, parishioners, retirees, teenagers from the neighborhood. Together, they shaped plaster, scavenged lumber, painted stone, and hauled cement up the hill. They would meet after work, sometimes at night, sometimes in the biting cold, building Bethlehem, Nazareth, the Garden of Eden, and even a recreation of Herod's palace. The park grew the way legends grow, quietly at first, then all at once. By the early 1960s, Holy Land, USA officially opened to the public. Holy Land wasn't a thrill park. There were no roller coasters, no spinning rides, no sideshow barkers. What it had instead was scale, ambition, and a very specific kind of magic. Visitors climbed narrow pathways lined with mossy stone. They descended into tiny biblical dioramas carved into the hillside. They wandered through a 40-foot version of Mount Sinai, stood inside a recreation of Jesus' tomb, and gazed out over a model of ancient Jerusalem. Every building hand-painted, At its peak in the 1960s and 70s, Holy Land, USA drew 30 to 40,000 visitors a year. That's crazy numbers. Families came with picnic baskets, church groups chartered buses. Photographers called it strange, whimsical, and profoundly American. Even Life magazine documented the park, placing it among the most unusual attractions in the country. Locals remember the atmosphere best: the smell of pine needles, the creaking of wooden stairs, the way the wind seemed to whisper around the tiny plaster houses. Holy Land wasn't flashy. It felt haunted by faith itself. Maybe it had that solemn feeling you get when you walk into a church. And then suddenly, it didn't. By the late 1970s, age and weather began devouring the handmade dioramas. Paint peeled, statues cracked, a once vibrant Bethlehem faded beige and gray. In 1984, Greco closed the park for planned renovations. He intended to rebuild, modernize, and give Holy Land a second life. But he never got a chance. He died in 1986, leaving his creation in the hands of a religious order who, overwhelmed by the scope of the repairs, let it sit untouched. For decades, Holy Land decayed in silence. The city below kept living, but the hill remained frozen in time. Plaster apostles leaned sideways. Jerusalem's miniature walls crumbled. The path to Calvary split apart in the weeds. Locals began whispering that Holy Land wasn't just abandoned, it was watching. By the 1990s and the 2000s, the park had become a magnet for teenagers with flashlights, paranormal investigators, urban explorers, and anyone drawn to beautiful ruins. They called it creepy, sacred, strangely alive. Stories spread about the shadows moving behind the old dioramas, voices heard near the crumbling nativity cave, and a general feeling of being followed as you walked on the ridge. But on a warm summer night in July of 2010, the place became something else entirely. It became a crime scene. Her name was Chloe Ottman, a 16-year-old girl, bright, artistic, known for her dry humor and her love of music. She had become friends with a boy, someone she thought she could trust. His name was Francis Caruso. He was 19 years old. And unfortunately, he was troubled, unpredictable, and in ways no one realized, very dangerous. On the night of July 24th, they walked up Pine Hill together. The same winding path countless teenagers used to take a view of the city. From the top, Waterbury's lights flicker like a broken constellation. Some kids went up there to talk, others went up there to drink or tell ghost stories. And Chloe, she never came back down. What happened on that hill was sudden and brutal. Caruso later confessed that he and Chloe had been drinking when he attempted to kiss her. She refused. They were just friends. She made it clear that she didn't want him in that way. Maybe he felt embarrassed, maybe he felt rejected. But something inside him snapped. Caruso attacked her. He choked her. And then, because the park was abandoned, isolated and silent, he dragged her deeper into the ruins. There, among the crumbling dioramas of ancient Jerusalem, he assaulted her. And then he took her life. When Chloe didn't return home, her family immediately raised the alarm. Search teams combed Waterbury all through the night. They found her body the next day, hidden near one of the old holy structures, discarded on the hillside, meant to honor scripture. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Holy Land, built to bring visitors closer to God, had become a stage for something monstrous. Caruso panicked and he fled. But within 24 hours, facing the weight of what he'd done, he turned himself in. He walked into a police station, trembling, and confessed to the killing. Later, the detectives described him as emotionless, detached, as though he didn't fully grasp the enormity of the violence. In interviews, the officers said that the case hit them harder than most. not just because of Chloe's age, but because of where it happened. Holy Land was already eerie, one investigator said. Quote, after that it felt wrong, like the place was holding a memory it didn't want, end quote. Caruso was eventually sentenced to 55 years in prison. After the murder, Holy Land's reputation changed permanently. People who visited the site during those years say they felt watched, not by a spirit, by the weight of the tragedy. Some say they heard footsteps on the hill when no one was there. Others say the wind seemed to carry the girl's voice, faint like someone calling for help long after help could arrive. For a while, locals avoided the hill completely. Parents told their teenagers to stay away. Priests warned parishioners not to trespass. Even urban explorers, the kind who normally run towards abandoned places, said Holy Land felt different now. The graffiti changed too. Most people began scrawling messages. Rest in peace, Chloe. Light this place again. The hill remembers. Police tape came down. Investigators packed up. Reporters moved on. But something on Pine Hill didn't move on with them. The people who have ventured up to Holy Land in the years after, teenagers, hikers, even a few urban explorers, all came back with the same strange feeling, the same tightness in their voice when they talked about it. It didn't feel empty anymore. The most common report came from the path leading from the old nativity cave to the very trail Chloe and Caruso walked that night. Multiple visitors described seeing a girl ahead of them on the path, only for her to vanish when they called out. Some said they saw the outline of her dress, others just the suggestion of movement, like someone slipping behind a bush. One teenager claimed he saw a girl standing still at the top of the trail, her back turned, her head slightly tilted. He shouted to her thinking she was lost or hurt. The figure didn't move. When he blinked, she was gone. He refused to visit that hill again. The old nativity cave, once a humble structure built of plaster and stone, became the center of the strangest reports. Visitors said that when you stepped inside, the temperature dropped. Not just a chill, a sudden collapse of warmth, as if stepping into a walk-in freezer. In a recent ghost hunt that I was on, I felt this for the first time, and it is absolutely eerie and bone-chilling in words that I cannot even describe. Some said the air felt heavy, almost damp, as though someone had been weeping inside moments before. More unsettling were the sounds. Explorers described hearing soft crying, quiet enough that you'd question it. Others heard what they thought were whispered words, like someone repeating a prayer that they didn't fully remember. One man, an urban explorer with years of abandoned places under his belt, said, quote, "It wasn't the sound of a ghost. It was the sound of sadness, ancient sadness, like the place was grieving," end quote. Holy Land's iconic cross overlooks all of Waterbury, a glowing sentinel. But the area beneath it is quiet, more silent than the rest of the hill. Visitors reported hearing footsteps circling the base of the cross, slow and deliberate. But no matter how quickly they turned, the path remained empty. One woman said she heard gravel crunching right behind her, so close she could feel the shift of the ground. But when she spun around, no one was there. She said it felt like someone was pacing, like a girl unsure of which way to go. Before, its eeriness came from abandonment, the natural quiet of a forgotten place. After Chloe's death, the quiet felt intentional, active, a listening kind of silence. Some nights, people in Waterbury claim they've seen flickering lights moving between the ruins, like someone carrying a candle or a small lantern. Others said the wind around the hill had a voice now, not words exactly, but a tone, a note, a hum of sadness that drifted through the trees. A former city worker who patrolled the area said, quote, "The place felt awake, like it knew what had happened, like it wasn't going to let anyone forget," end quote. The strangest account came from a group of teens who snuck up to Holy Land one October night. A few months after the restoration efforts began, they swore they heard someone whisper, "Please don't leave me. Please don't leave me," whispered so close behind them that two of them turned and ran. The third teen, the one who stayed just long enough to look, said the whisper didn't sound angry. It sounded lonely. Whether these stories are paranormal or just echoes of tragedy replaying in people's minds, no one can say for sure. But one thing is certain: after the murder of Chloe Ottman, Holy Land didn't just fall into ruin. It absorbed something, a memory, a voice, a presence. And on certain nights, when the wind slides down Pine Hill, brushing past the last broken stone of ancient Jerusalem, locals swear they hear it. A soft cry, a faint whisper, a girl calling out in the dark. And then in 2013, something remarkable began to stir. It started with a private purchase, two unlikely stewards stepping forward to claim the abandoned site and give it purpose once more. Mayor Neil O'Leary, a lifelong Waterbury resident with a deep connection to the city and its heritage, partnered with local businessman Fred Blasius to buy Holy Land from the religious order that had inherited it after John Greco's death. Their plan was simple, but bold. Bring this place back, not just out of curiosity, but as a place of meaning again. The very first symbol of that commitment was the cross. For decades, Holy Land's cross had stood like a guardian in the sky. Steel, neon, and light, visible from every major road leading into Waterbury. But by the early 2000s, it had lost much of its luster. What once had been a beacon of community pride now seemed faded, forgotten like the bark itself. But those two men decided to build a new cross, bigger, brighter, and more alive than anything that stood there before. Local fabricators at Pisani Steel took up the challenge. They donated the materials, labor, and expertise to construct a structure that would tower over the hill and the city itself. Designed with 5,000 LED lights, the cross wasn't just a symbol of faith, it was a testament to renewal. It would glow at night, visible for miles, cycling through colors tied to the biblical holidays, responding to holy days and seasons with illumination and brilliance. On December 22, 2013, as Christmas approached, the new cross was lit for the first time. The night thousands of Waterbury residents, Catholics, and people of many faiths all gathered on the hill and in the streets below to witness it. Children craned their necks, cars lined the roads, and for the first time in decades, wonder, not ruin, radiated from Pine Hill. The local residents described it best. Quote, "When that cross lit up again, it felt like Waterbury came home. For many, it was like seeing an old friend, a familiar glow that reminded them of their childhood car rides, family picnics, and long-ago church outings to a biblical theme park. Others were struck by the sheer scale, a 65-foot beacon perched on a hill, shining warmth into the cold winter night. But that's not the only restoration that happened. Clearing brush and debris from the overgrown grounds, volunteers began to uncover the outline of what once had been a miniature biblical world. Trails were cut back into view, old stones and walkways reemerged from under wild foliage. For the first time in decades, Holy Land was not forgotten. It was being remembered. And then, in 2014, it opened again, not as a theme park, but as a spiritual landmark in public space. An inaugural mass drew worshipers and curious visitors alike, signing a new era, not of carnival lights or plaster replicas, but of reflection, heritage, and community. The cross that now stands atop Pine Hill is more than steel and LEDs. It's a resurrection story, a place that fell into decay, of a community that refused to let it be cast aside, and of how even by the darkest histories can be followed by renewal. And to this day, when the sun dips below the horizon and the colors of the cross shift from warm golds to deep purples and soft blues, the hill above Waterbury still rises, unchanged in its shape, but forever altered in its story. Holy Land, USA is no longer abandoned. The cross glows bright once more, a symbol of faith, hope, and resilience. Families can climb the hill in the daylight. Tourists snap photos, unaware of the shadows that linger in the corners of the crumbling pathways. But some things never leave. The whispers of that summer night in 2010 seem to hang in the air. The soft, urgent echoes of a girl who should have lived, her presence stitched into the very soil and stone of the park. A beacon of light and a keeper of shadows. It reminds us that even in the brightest lights, darkness can linger, that the past, no matter how long ago, refuses to fade completely. And so the hill waits. It waits for visitors, for memories, for whispers, and for us to remember that every place has its stories. Some told in daylight, some in the dark. Holy Land, USA is still there, watching, waiting, and shining its light over the city below. But sometimes, if you listen closely, you realize the light doesn't always chase away the shadows. Thank you for listening to this episode of Death-Kissed Traveler. Next week's Christmas episode is absolutely heartbreaking. It happened at Disneyland on Christmas Eve. This podcast is produced by Sun-Kissed Traveler, the travel agency that takes the stress out of planning a vacation. Looking for a super fun vacation? How about a Caribbean cruise or a trip to Universal Studios? No matter where you want to go, Sun-Kissed Traveler can help. See show notes for details or visit sun-kissedtraveler.com.